Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about sleep. I think we've only ever had one other show dedicated to sleep or rest in the entirety of this entire podcast. So I'm excited to bring to you Dr. Micheal Breus. He is the sleep doctor. And before I tell you more about him, two quick announcements. Today is April 5th. 2022, if you're getting it on the day of release. And today, the doors close for the Roadmap to Emotional Healing course. We start tomorrow, and that's why the doors have to close today. So if you have heard about it, you've thought about it, it's only going to be live one time, which means we're doing 4 weeks in a row where we get together. We teach, we hold you accountable to the exercises, we work through them, you ask questions, and you're being guided on a path to create a roadmap for your emotional healing based on your core wounds and based on a few other factors we'll discuss in the course. So if you're interested, again, today is the last day to sign up, jjflazanes.com/roadmap. There is a payment plan, and you get a one-on-one session with me or one of my trainers, plus another course, the Anatomy of Emotion course included. So please check it out if you are interested, jjflazanes.com/roadmap. If you're getting this in May of 2022 or beyond, the course will be available at that same link, but it will not be live. So you will have to hold yourself accountable to do the exercises and hopefully space it out and do it once a week, as we're going to be doing here live shortly. The other announcement is that because of the Roadmap to Emotional Healing course, I'm postponing the Empowerment Strategist certification course to start in May. So you still have time. There's 1 or 2 slots left, and I don't have to fill them. It's become clear to me in the last couple of weeks that I really want to support the people who are doing it already and make sure that they are in the world working on their own business as well as coaching and training for me. So I don't need to certify hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. That's never the goal currently, because that wouldn't work for me. This program is about trust. This program is about representing, and I want to make sure that I do the best for the people who've already stepped forward. So I may or may not do this next year. So if you're on the fence about it, I know I've said I'll do it again next year, and maybe I will. I can't tell you that because it depends on how referrals and relationships go for me, right? I just know that I don't want to keep adding more trainers until I've got the ones already certified working. So if you want to take this deep dive into your own emotional healing individually and then help others with it, again, there are 1 or 2 slots left. I'm happy to do a smaller group. So this is just an invitation. If it resonates with you, it's not a guarantee that you apply, you're going to get it, but go to jjflazanes.com/cert if you're interested, if you want to have a conversation. And that's all for that. So let's talk about Dr. Micheal Breus. He is a double board certified clinical psychologist and clinical sleep specialist. He is one of only 168 psychologists in the world to have taken and passed the sleep medicine boards without going to medical school. Dr. Breus is the author of 4 books, with the newest book, Energize, Go From Dragging Ass to Kicking It in 30 Days. Adds the concept of movement, not exercise, and intermittent fasting to his already famous Sleep Chronotypes. And it was recently named one of the top books of 2021 by The Today Show. In his 3rd book, in 2017, The Power of When, which is a groundbreaking biohacking book proving there's a perfect time to do everything based on your biological chronotype, early bird or night owl. Dr. Breus gives the reader the exact times to have sex, run a mile, eat a cheeseburger, buy, sell, ask your boss for a raise, and much more based on over 200 research studies. He is an expert resource for most major publications, doing more than 400 interviews per year. Oprah, Dr. Oz, The Doctors, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, etc. Dr. Breus has been in private practice for 23 years and recently relocated and was named the top sleep doctor of Los Angeles by Reader's Digest. Welcome, everyone, to another show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. And today we're going to talk about sleep. I realize we haven't really talked about that very much. And so if you are finding this video on YouTube because you're searching for Dr. Micheal Breus, just know this is my show, which means I'm going to talk. And if you don't like me, totally cool. So Dr. Breus, where can they find more of just you?
So if people want to find more about just me, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is The Sleep Doctor.
Perfect. There you go. So I have been on Dr. Micheal Breus's list, I swear, since 2009.
Wow.
And yeah, long time. long
I
time I've
love
been on
it.
your list, and this is our first conversation. Don't ask me why it took me so long. And when it comes to marketing, you're great at it and I have never unsubscribed because I'm like, oh, there's always something interesting. And then I thought, oh, I need to have him on the show because I haven't really talked about sleep. And hello, everybody sleeps. So, and I think what I like about your newest book coming out is that it adds a piece of what I'm doing, which is the emotional piece. And so I love that conversation, how do all these things combine? Because to me, everything is connected. So let's start out with those of you that are listening on the podcast. By now, we're on video. So you can come to jjflazanes.tv to meet Dr. Micheal Breus. And you've heard his bio, which those of you on the video, you can download the podcast below and take us with you. And then you can hear more about his background if he's new to you. But let's start with the story of you're a clinical psychologist. How did you become a sleep doctor?
Right. So that was kind of an interesting path. And I'm a little bit of a storyteller, so it's going to take me a second to kind of get through it all, if that's cool by you.
Of course.
So I started out in graduate school getting a Ph.D. in clinical psychology. And to be honest with you, I was doing a specialization in sport psychology while I was there. So I was the guy who wanted to work with athletes or team members or whoever to help them run faster and throw harder and do all these kind of cool different things. And so I was studying at the University of Georgia, which is where I'm from. I'm actually from Sandy Springs, Georgia. So it was great to be not too far from home. By the way, Bulldogs won the national championship this year, just saying. And so while I was there, you do an internship. So as a clinical psychologist, very similar to what a medical doctor would do, you would do a residency. I did an internship or a residency to kind of practice what you learn in school, right? So people are looking over you, you're working with real patients, that kind of thing. Well, the best sports psychology internship in the country, where what I was interested in, which was eating disorders in athletes, was at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. Awesome. I applied. They said, Micheal, we love you. You're fantastic. However, we kind of only accept the Harvards, the Princetons, and the Yales of the world. I went to the University of Georgia. It's a top 20 program, but it wasn't Harvard or Yale. So they said, we're sorry, you're not going to be in. But they had a sleep track that they were advertising. So I come from a background where I worked my way through graduate school in the electrophysiology department. So I'm the geeky, wonky, weirdo guy that likes to take apart any machine that measures body signals and put it back together to make it work again. Turns out the sleep machines are identical to the machines that I worked on throughout graduate school. So here's what I decided to do. I said, I'm going to sell myself as a sleep guy. And then the second I get there, I'm just going to transfer over into the sports psychology program, right? Because just because you tell me I'm not walking through the front door doesn't mean I ain't going to be in your program. It just means I'm going to show up in the side door or the back door, and then you're going to have to deal with me that way. So I applied for it, got the position. First day in, raised my hand. They said, Dr. Breus, what can we do for you? I said, well, I'd like to transfer over to the sports psychology program. They said, we had a feeling that you might want to do that. So here's the deal. You got to do sleep for 6 months, and then the last half of your internship, you can do whatever you want to do. How hard could this be, right? I mean, it's sleep, for God's sakes. I do it all the time. It can't be that tough. So I started up the sleep rotation. JJ, by the third day, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine, and I knew I would never change my career ever. Let me tell you something. I help people that fast. It's unbelievable. As a traditional clinical psychologist, it can take months, even years to see any kind of treatment gains in your patients. I can literally change people's lives overnight, and it's awesome. I feel so blessed to be in the position that I'm in, to be able to identify something that somebody doesn't see, be able to assess them quickly, and then get them to a treatment modality where we literally change their lives. I mean, it's really pretty cool if you think about it. And so I was pretty excited to get the opportunity to do that. So I got back to the University of Georgia because I had to defend my dissertation, which I did successfully. And they said, okay, now you're officially a doctor. So I got my very first job at a sleep center in Decatur, Georgia, right outside Atlanta, Georgia. Now, remember, I'm a PhD clinical psychology. I'm working for a medical practice. So the practice, I'm in for the job interview, right? And you remember a time in your career where if you just made like $25,000 a year, you could afford health insurance? That's where I was in my life, right? So I was talking to my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and I said, if they just offer me 25 or 30 grand, we can get health insurance. This is going to be awesome, right? And so go to the interview. I crushed the interview. They offer me 60 grand a year. They offer me full medical benefits, medical education, the works, right? They said, but by the way, at the end of the first year, you need to take and pass the medical boards in sleep. I raised my hand. I said, Dr. DeMarini, I'm a PhD. I'm not an MD. Those are medical boards. He said, there's 1 year left where a non-MD can take the medical boards. And if you take them and pass, you get to keep your job. If you fail, you're fired at the end of the first year.
So I was reading about that in your bio about that you were the first, like the last of PhDs or non-MDs to get your medical license.
Yeah. So I go home, and you know what the first thing I said to my girlfriend at the time? 60 grand. This is awesome. We're in the money, right? I had no idea I was ever going to try something like that. I didn't even tell her about it at first. A couple of days later, I said, oh, by the way, they want me to take the medical board. She's like, what? I said, yeah. She said, a couple of days go by after that, and she looked at me and she said, well, are you going to take them? And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm going to try to take the medical boards. I was like, nobody takes the medical boards without going to medical school. She said, I think you can do it. That was all it took. And I laid in and I studied for a year. So I taught myself neuroanatomy, neurochemistry, general medicine, pediatrics. And I took and passed a 2-part medical board. And I've been a sleep specialist ever since. Been a lot of fun. I cut my teeth hard on regular sleep medicine, 30 patients a day, 15 sleep studies a night type of thing. And I got really lucky. A friend of mine was working for a company called Medscape, which turned into a company called WebMD. And I became the WebMD sleep expert and started producing content for them and answering questions for them. And it's amazing, JJ, how many people don't know shit about sleep. It's unbelievable. And so the goal here was just real science, real education. Let's get people to understand not just the anatomy of sleep, not just the biology of sleep, but the psychology of sleep and the emotional aspects to sleep. I know that's something that you're big into, and I'm excited to talk more about that here on the show.
Awesome. Yeah. Prior to me pressing record today, we were discussing sort of the angle of today's show and talking about items. And Dr. Breus had asked me, do you want me to mention, what the best beds are, all the kinds of stuff. And you guys are probably thinking, yes, tell me. But what I said was, I think that when it comes to what I think is the hardest topic is, and you're addressing this in your new book. And so I wanted to make sure people know that Dr. Breus has a new book out that we're going to talk about and give you a link to get the book, to learn more about. He's got a quiz. We're going to talk about sleep so much. And I don't know how we're going to do this in an hour or less. You might have to come back. So my comment was that Band-Aids, and I'm not saying they're Band-Aids. And you had a great response back to me, which is when it's a performance, what did you say to me? It's a performance sport?
Well, I said sleep is a performance activity. And so just like in sports, if you've got the right equipment, you'll perform better. I would argue that the same holds true for sleep, right? So if you're sleeping in a bed that looks like a taco, I got news for you. Getting a new bed is probably going to improve your sleep. However, you can never blame 100% of your sleep issues if you're not looking between your ears. I'm just going to be straight up with you, because your psychology influences everything that happens before your biology has to take over.
And that was on the heels. I'm currently in process of editing. And by the time the show is out, I will have already published my most recent interview with Dr. Breus Lipton about spontaneous evolution. And he's one of the pioneers in epigenetics and this whole conversation about where it all starts from. And it's epigenetic. It's not. So with that said, I said, well, yeah, brands are good. I love my bed. It's the best bed I've ever had. And it doesn't off gas and it's healthy and it's expensive. But at the same time, I want to make sure that people understand that it's not, there are Band-Aids. People like to take the pills. They like to change a diet, but everybody wants to avoid the emotional conversation because it's hard. It's uncomfortable. You don't want to feel out of control. You don't want to feel sad. You don't want to bring up the emotions that need to be expressed. And again, I harp on this all the time. So, but not going to do that today. We'll talk about it together as colleagues, but because my people are, I get it at nauseum. I talk about emotions because I think most people suck at processing them. And I think the difference between being a psychologist, like when you were mentioning it in psychology, sometimes it could take months or even years. And I'm thinking, oh, I do it in a session all the time as a coach. As a coach, I have a client come in who's been in therapy for 6 months, who hasn't felt any better, any different, doesn't have any more insight onto what's going on. I have one session and I've now deconstructed all of these feelings that they have into why and what to do about them. And all of a sudden they feel empowered. So I, like you, love the fast, give me something I can actually feel better, do something with, and change my life. Sometimes it takes one session to deconstruct some big story, some big feeling, some big way of looking at something. And so let's look at the sleep patterns, the sleep, like all the things that you do. So what are some of the things that are that one thing that changes someone's life when it comes to sleep? What are those factors?
So it's really interesting, but I would argue that if you had to pick just one, it's all about consistency. Okay. And so the way I look at sleep is I say there's two main factors to understanding sleep and getting really good at it. One is discipline, the other is acceptance. Okay. So discipline has to do with consistency. So if you could do only one thing, I mean, seriously, only one thing for your sleep, it would be wake up at the same time every day, 7 days a week. 7 days a week. There's no such thing as catching up on your sleep. I want to be very clear about that. And 8 hours is a myth. I want to be very clear about that as well. So everybody has an individual amount of sleep that they need in order to not be sleep deprived. So as an example, I go to bed at midnight, almost on the nose every single night. I wake up without an alarm. I don't know why it's this number, 6:13 every single day. It's weird. I know it's strange. I open my eyes and there it says 6:13. I'm not exactly sure why it does that, but that's what it does. So I get 6 hours and 13 minutes of sleep every night. By the way, I'm the sleep doctor, okay? So let's be clear about that. If my wife did the same thing, she would be horribly sleep deprived. She goes to bed around 10:45. She likes to get up around 6:45, 7 o'clock. So she likes to get her sleep. If she did the same amount I did, she would be sleep deprived. But we're really only talking about minutes there. We need to talk about quality as well. Quality sleep means more than the actual minutes. So you might be wondering, well, how can this sleep doctor guy that we're listening to only get 6 hours and 15 minutes of sleep and still function, be well, do all these different things? It has to do with the quality of the sleep that we're getting. And here's the kicker: by waking up at the exact same time every single day. Notice I didn't say going to bed at the same time. I said waking up at the same time. There are two things that happen, and this is from a science perspective that very few people know and understand. Number one, when you open up your eyes at a particular time every day, light comes in and hits a special cell in your eye called a melanopsin cell, which turns off the melatonin faucet in your brain. This helps get rid of brain fog. It helps keep your chronorhythm up to date, everything that you want to have it done. Most people know about that, but what they don't know about is it actually also sets a timer in your brain for melatonin to re-engage somewhere between 14 and 16 hours later. So here's what happens. You wake up at 6 a.m. every single day of the week. 14 hours later, your body produces melatonin. Then on Saturday, you say, you know what? I stayed up late. I think I'm going to sleep in until 9, right? Not 6. Guess what happens to your melatonin production? It pushes by 3 hours because you slept in by 3 hours. Now your brain doesn't want to go to bed at the same time at night. It wants to go to bed 3 hours later because you slept in for 3 hours. As you can see, this will repeat itself on Sunday. And this is why Mondays suck, okay? Is because of what's called social jet lag, right? Stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday, stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. What does your brain and body want to do? It wants to stay up late and it wants to sleep in. So if there's one thing you could do, it's get up at the exact same time every single day.
So before I started my podcast and before I sort of graduated, I'm going to say, or retired from personal training and decided to be an empowerment strategist, I prostituted, if you will, my mornings to my clients. And so I've been waking up between 5:45, 5:30, 20 years, 25 years.
Sure.
And the first thing I did, and then this is when my new partner came into my life and he's an entrepreneur, and I got to say, "Ooh, you're an entrepreneur. We're going to set a schedule. We're going to every morning, 3 days a week, we're going to get up. We're going to meditate. We're going to exercise. We're not working until 11. Don't you dare set an appointment until 11 a.m. on these days." And because of us being entrepreneurs, we go to bed at the same time. Like my previous relationship, we go to bed at different times. And so there became this, on one side, law of attraction, I feel the sense of freedom from sleeping in. Now, my sleeping in is getting up at 7, and I don't sleep with an alarm because I have the sense of freedom, and I do pretty much get up around the same time, anywhere between 6:45 and 7:15, naturally. Although I'll get up earlier because the cats wake me up, which I know that's probably an issue for my sleep. Getting up and being disturbed at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever.
Cats are tough. I have French bulldogs in my bed. Trust me, it's not good.
Yeah, I know, but and I'm not willing to give that up. So we're going to compensate or balance out on another level. But do I need, for the people who don't for people like me who don't set an alarm, and you don't set an alarm, but you get up naturally, do I need to set an alarm to make sure I wake up every day?
It's a great question. I would say no, and here's why. You ever have that instance where like you have to get up early for a flight and you set your alarm and then you wake up 2 hours ahead and then 1 hour ahead and then half an hour ahead and then 5 minutes? Like that's pretty much what's going to happen. If you don't use an alarm, don't use an alarm. If you currently use an alarm, fine. I don't think I care. It would be awesome if we got you to the point where you naturally woke up about 5 minutes before your alarm went off. And I teach people sometimes in my sleep coaching practices how to do something like that. Again, once you follow this thing called your chronotype, which is your internal genetic sort of swim lane for sleep, if you will, once you start following that, everything gets a lot easier.
Okay, woo-woo question for you. What's your birthday?
When's my birthday? I just had it, February 12th.
You're an Aquarius. Okay.
54. I am an Aquarian.
Okay. Do you know anything else about your chart, just out of curiosity?
I'm actually having a full reading done at the end of this month. A friend of mine gifted it for me. And so I'm kind of excited. My wife follows some of that stuff. So I'm looking forward to learning something. I
wouldn't be surprised if you had a lot of fire. It's not in the Aquarians. And that's funny because even Dr. Lisa is also an Aquarius. Aquarians, are all about thinking and like in the space of ideas and thoughts and ideas and thoughts. And so sometimes that you probably maybe in a past life or prior to getting into psychology, would you say like some people have, like if I'd say what's the issue or what's the common way that you repress emotion? It could be maybe anxiety, like in thinking, because there's a lot of energy possibly there. But anyway, I also wonder, because I have a lot of fire in me, Pisces, but anyway, I'm just be curious when you get your reading, birthday? If in March 5th, it's coming up, but I have a Sag moon, a Sag rising, an Aries Venus. And anyway, I've got a lot of fire.
I don't know what all of that is, but I think
I'd just be interested. You have to let me know, because I'd be curious if there's fire in you because of how much. So what that means astrologically is if I have a lot of fire energy is about action and doing. So I would think that I would. You have a lot
of fire.
Right. So while I love my sleep, because I also have a lot of water, I love my sleep. Someone who has more fire has more energy, like action energy. So it'd be interesting to kind of compare chronotypes with astrology for me on my own little project. But you mentioned chronotypes. Cool, actually. I think so.
We did a little bit of it with some Ayurvedics. So, like Ayurvedic medicine, some of the chronotypes really follow suit nicely with that. And to be clear, it's not like I invented something new, right? I mean, chronotypes have been around since the dawn of time. So I think there's definitely some utility there. I think it would be fascinating if we sent out ask people what their birthday was and then look at their sign and see if there was a particular astrological sign that was more in the lion chronotype versus the wolf chronotype and things like that. That would be cool. I'm writing that down. That's kind of fun. Can
I help with that? Can I look at that? Because that's my jam. I love that kind of stuff because it also gives another reason why. I mean, I taught a whole astrology course for people to, like I said, if you have any fire in you and you have any anxiety or, you do need to be moving, you need to be moving. It's not that's part of mental health for you versus other people being still. So anyway,
that's interesting. So my wife constantly, I pace constantly, especially if I'm on the phone or if I'm trying to think of a new idea, like I just read an article and I'm trying to digest it. I'm back and forth in the house and then I go out this door back here and I take my dogs with me. So I think you nailed me. I've got whatever that is in me, fire.
Well, no, it's fire. And it's not one thing and it could be in different positions. So anyway, I'd love to, if maybe we could talk about it. I'd love to see your chart when you're done, or I can do your chart when we're done. And then I can tell you, and you'll have to wait till you're reading. I'm happy to do your chart at the end of this conversation. So, but let's look at chronotypes. And because you said if there's only one thing you could do, it'd be consistency and then quality. And I guess, before we get to chronotypes, we really should address quality. So if someone says, all right, well, consistency, I understand that. Get up every morning in the same time. Now, how do I improve the quality?
Right. So here's what's nice is if you sleep within your chronotypical swim lane, it does it for you because your body's already wanting to sleep at a high quality level during this specific time. So if it's okay, can I double tap down on what is a chronotype and kind of give people?
Go for it. Yeah, please.
Awesome. So we've been using this term chronotype, but actually people know what the concept is. They may not have heard of the term, but they know of the concept. If anybody out there listening or watching has ever been called an early bird or a night owl, those are chronotypes, okay? So we're not talking about some weird thing. We're talking about early birds versus night owls. So back in the 70s, some guys came up with the questionnaire, morningness, eveningness questionnaire, and you could figure out, were you a morning person, were you an evening person, or were you somebody in the middle? So we called them early birds, night owls, and believe it or not, we called the people in the middle hummingbirds. I'm not 100% sure why we called them hummingbirds. It seems really stupid to me, but for whatever reason, they're hummingbirds. So fast forward, we started to look at chronotypes in a much more refined way, in a much more research-focused way inside sleep medicine, because we started to learn that when people didn't sleep within this pathway, they were exhausted all the time. So literally by moving somebody's schedule, we actually enabled an improvement in overall quality sleep. Now, let's be fair. Just moving your schedule isn't going to change it all for you, right? There's some habits that are important and some emotions that are important. So step number one is stick to one wake-up schedule. But step number two is to stop caffeine by 2 p.m., right? So caffeine's a stimulant. Bottom friggin' line, guys. Like I'm sorry. It lasts in your system. The half-life of caffeine is somewhere between 6 and 8 hours for most people. As we get older, our metabolism slows down, so it actually stays in longer for people as we get older. So remember, if you stop caffeine by 2, if it's got a half-life of about 8 hours, by 10 o'clock, at least 50% is out of your system. Now, here's the scarier statistic, is the quarter life of caffeine is 12 hours. So if you had your cup of coffee at 9 a.m., 25% of that caffeine is still floating around at 9 p.m., right? So if you have any proclivity for anxiety, right? If you have any proclivity for difficulty falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep, caffeine's really not your friend, right? But a lot of people think that it is. They're like, oh, I didn't sleep well. I'm going to get an energy boost and I'm going to go. The short boost that you may or may not get, by the way, because by the way, your body adapts to caffeine over time and you don't get that boost after a while. So you have to have more and more caffeine, which causes more and more problems. You just end up with basically really poor quality sleep. The third thing that's a biggie, and these are still external things to talk about how to improve sleep, is alcohol, right? So at the end of the day, there's a really big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? So we don't like the passing out side of things, but here's the crazy part, JJ, is alcohol is the #1 sleep aid in the world. Like in the world, more people drink themselves to sleep than anything else. And so we have to take a look at this. Now, I want to be clear. I like scotch. I like beer, I like wine. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with any of them. I'm not the sleep specialist who's going to say you cannot have any of that, right? Notice I said stop caffeine at 2 p.m. I didn't say stop caffeine altogether. Same holds true with alcohol. If you're going to drink, which again, I have no problem with, you want to give yourself time before lights out and look at the amount before lights out. Limit it to 2 drinks, and here's why. Average human takes them about an hour to digest one alcoholic beverage. Once you get past 2 drinks, you usually get buzzed. Now, I'm not saying getting buzzed is a bad thing, but what that means is that there's something going on in your brain and it's become toxic, which means cortisol is the hormone that's going to jack right up and say, what's going on up here? So then you're an energetic drunk, right? So that's not helpful for sleep. So if you can, limit yourself to 2 drinks, wait 1 hour per beverage, and drink 1 glass of water per beverage. If you just want to be super duper safe, stop drinking alcohol 3 hours before bed, drink a couple of glasses of water, you should be just fine. I think those 3 things, when you say to me, Michael, what are the 3 things that people can do to improve their quality of sleep? If people just did those 3 things, I swear to you, mountains would be moved in their sleep.
I love that. And when you said 2 o'clock, I was like, 2 o'clock, I have to stop caffeine before noon. If I have caffeine after 12 noon, I won't sleep well.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine you on caffeine.
You're right. Oh, well, remember back in the day when there were like NoDoz, remember NoDoz?
Oh, yes.
Those caffeine pills in college that, and after,
Absolutely.
and I remember getting angry or when,
yeah.
in the beginning of personal training, when they were doing those fat burning pills that are all basically caffeine.
Ephedra.
Yes. And I had tried those early on. And
Everybody tried them. What are you kidding me?
These make me angry.
Oh,
I'm like, well, because I already have energy. So it takes me like aggro, right? And versus the other person who might be sort of low energy, it like peps them up.
Right.
They feel good, which is why it's addicting, because they like, oh, I feel good on these. And I'm like, ooh, I'm angry. And it's all bad anyway for you. But when you were like 2 o'clock, I was like, God, if I have a glass of or a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock, I'm done. I won't be sleeping. But I do love the 3 hours before bed, like stop drinking, 3 hours before bed, a glass of water. That's a really clear. And I think that I'd love to take this conversation just a little into sort of the internal things that cause, because you just said people drink themselves to sleep. Well, people numb themselves from their feelings. And 100%. So it's that understanding of, okay, I've had a hard day, and rather than emotionally process what's going on with me, I'm going to numb it. I'm going to numb it through television. I'm going to numb it through food. I'm going to numb it through dessert and sugar, or I'm going to numb it through alcohol.
Or cannabis.
Or thank you. Oh my God. I love my CBD, and but those of you that have been smoking for years because it's the only way for you to get to sleep, big red flag here. You're repressing some things, and the fact that you're very dependent. This is an addiction, guys, an addiction to not dealing with your stuff. So what internal things do you deal with, and do you tell people, and do you help them with, or do you work with that can affect their sleep?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing to do is identify the symptom, right? And so I get asked 3 big questions. What bed should I buy? What's the best time for sex? And how do I turn off my brain if I wake up in the middle of the night? Okay. So the last one, I think, makes a lot of sense for this discussion, because people want to turn off their brain. Right? That sounds like numbing to me. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a perfect example of somebody trying to numb themselves. So the question becomes, what are you thinking about before bed? Right? That usually, and by the way, that's why I'm a psychologist, because that's the stuff I like to kind of crack into and start to figure out. And here's what we learn. And so this is a very wide topic. So I'm going to go to a lot of different areas within this. Some of them are going to be more on the abuse side versus the non-abuse side. So there are a lot of people who have been abused in the bedroom, and they become phobic to sleep, right? And so they can't turn off their brain because of a particular PTSD situation that has occurred to them in that particular environment, right? I'm not talking about that, but I do want to recognize that happens. And I do want to let women and men out there know that there are available resources out there for you if that is something that has gone on. I want to be very, very clear about that. You don't have to be afraid of your bedroom if something bad happened in there, but there are people out there who can help you break that fear or separate from that fear in a positive and forceful way. So that's number one. Number two, not talking about that kind of side of things, just plain old anxiety. I mean, let's be honest. If you can't turn off your brain before bed, it's because you're thinking too much. I tell people all the time, you got to have runway to land the plane, right? So I came up with this technique. I call it the power down hour. So let's say you're going to bed at midnight. Starting at 11, if you can chop that up into 3 separate times, then you can start to do some stress reduction, because that's really kind of what you need to be doing at that particular period of time. So 20 minutes for just shit you got to do. So in our house, it's getting kids' backpacks together, finding shoes, sports equipment, that whole kind of thing. 20 minutes for hygiene. By the way, I want to do a quick double tap on hygiene for a second for folks out there. If anybody out there who's watching or listening has a tendency to wear makeup during the daytime, quick hint, don't wait until just before bed to take off your makeup, because you're basically bathing in blue light literally 10 minutes before you're going to sleep. Because look, I've worn makeup on television before, and you have to really look in the mirror, and you got the light blasting on you. So please, please, please take off your makeup earlier in the evening, so you don't have that big dose of blue light. And then the final 20 minutes is reserved for some form of meditation, relaxation, prayer. This is where the stress reduction happens. This is where the runway starts, right? Sleep isn't an on-off switch. I know you've heard me say this 1,000 times. It's more like slowly pulling your foot off the gas and slowly putting your foot on the brake. So anxiety is real, and we need to talk about what is going on in people's heads. So the biggest complaint that I hear people say is they're thinking about, what did they do that day that was good or bad? Okay, going to be honest with you. I don't have a problem if you're going to think about good things before bed. Believe it or not, there's actually data to show that optimism before bed not only helps you fall asleep quicker, but gives you more positive dreams. But I don't like it if you've got a negative sound engineer in your head that's telling you all the things you messed up all day. That's not going to make you fall asleep any quicker. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's going to make you fall asleep longer. And I'm pretty sure you're going to have pretty crappy dreams because of that, right? So right before bed, try to stay positive. My favorite thing is a gratitude list. I know it sounds simple. I know it sounds woo-woo, but I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, there you go. Gratitude journal right there. Like, it's worth it. Like, I want to be super duper clear about this. Gratitude works. Okay. So if you're there and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I can't sleep. I'll step back for a second. You might surprise yourself with what you could be grateful for. Looks like you have something you want to say.
Well, I'm showing you my journals
I know.
because, and I have more of them, but one thing you don't know about me is I kind of specialize in teaching law of attraction and from the science of quantum physics. All right. And then using the epigenetics and the quantum physics together in the coaching and all the things. And one of the easiest practices for law of attraction is what you just talked about, a gratitude journal. I call it an appreciation journal just because the vibration of appreciation to me is cleaner than the word gratitude. Because there's, but having, and this is where like you get to create at night, you get to create and acknowledge the things that I tell all of my clients to do this. This is one of the easiest practices. It's free. It's, for you to do. It takes not that long a time. You don't have to like write a whole story about, it shouldn't be like today no. Bullet points. What do I appreciate about today? I did this. I did this. This happened. I love my husband and my kids and I appreciate them. And then you go to bed. And so I love that you said that because it is absolutely now, so not just about manifestation and feeling better. It's about dealing with, if you don't sleep very well and you've resisted this, that I've talked about before, maybe this is now a time to give it a try. And it doesn't have to be a whoa, it could literally just be a gratitude journal about things that you appreciate. So I do love that. And I've been doing that for years. It's one of the most powerful ways that I manifest too, because then I take it to the next step, which is not only here's what I appreciate, but what am I looking forward to? So I get excited about, I get juiced up about, I use my visualization process to go, what do I want? God, what's that going to feel like? And then you go further into, so now you're really putting out a really nice.
Don't want to do that right before bed.
Okay. Well, but it doesn't seem to affect my sleep though.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Because I was going to ask you, like, because I have one client who's she's very emotionally outward. And so she's sharing her emotions a lot. And she told me that when she does something similar to that, she gets so into it and excited, she gets energized from it and she doesn't fall asleep. But you seem to have you maybe have a different path where maybe your body is used to it and kind of knows when to shut it down. Is that an accurate?
I think there's a difference for me in how I use the visualization. It's like, what am I looking forward to? But there's a grounded knowingness, not oh my God, I have to take action now. Right. There's it's the visualization of, because, in law of attraction, my favorite quote is, the only reason why you want what you want is because you think you'll feel better when you have it.
Right.
So this is a practice of feeling the feelings of feeling better, whatever that means for people: love, safety, security, a connection, whatever. And it's generating those feelings, which I think ultimately everybody just wants to feel better. Relief is what we're looking for ultimately.
So better and relief can also be identified as sleep.
Oh.
Right. So remember, you get a timeout when you sleep, right? And that's part of the reason why people, so I completely agree with you. And this is an interesting discussion because I also want to bring it in time before bed. So not just that hour before bed where we're talking about meditation, relaxation, and gratitude, but maybe 2 or 3 hours before bed where we can do some real work on ourselves. So maybe after dinner when you've got a full belly, so you're not hangry, and trying to sort through those emotions, right? But you've got some food in your stomach, not too much food, but enough food for you to be able to be active. And then really thinking through, that's a lot of times what I'm talking about with people is, if you want to have an emotional discussion with your partner, don't do it in bed, right? Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Like, it should be at the kitchen table or on a walk with the dog or whatever. But that time before bed, and I agree with you, we've got to address these issues because, quite frankly, they ain't going away. Your anxiety is not going to magically disappear because you sleep or drink yourself to sleep or smoke yourself to sleep or whatever it is that you decide to do. So the best way to get really great high quality sleep is to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to address the issues that you don't want to talk about, because that's kind of what's going on in your head.
Right. Right. And again, and I recognize it's what people think is the hardest, scariest part. So let's just move that aside for a second and say, go, okay, yeah, JJ, I've heard you talk about this. It's nausea. I'm going to talk about it all the time. I know it affects everything in my body. Okay. All right. Okay. I get it. Let's go backwards though a little bit. I want to talk about the chronotypes, the four of them that there are. But before we do that, let's give them what they're now going. Why didn't you ask them this? All right, give us the brands. What's the bed? What's the pillow? What's the, just
Sure. Sure, just lay it out there. Okay, so I work with a lot of different brands with a lot of different products. I personally test everything and I use it all myself, or I actually run data on it in a separate laboratory to make sure that it's highly effective. So if people are looking for cool stuff, here's what I'll tell you. From a bed perspective, I've really fallen in love with Purple, believe it or not. It's called the Purple mattress, and I really like it. It's got a very unique support system in it. I have low back pain, and so it has literally, my back pain has disappeared sleeping on this bed, which has been kind of miraculous for me because I had low back pain for quite a while. And if I sleep on a different bed and then I come back to it, I can tell the difference for sure. We actually have multiple beds in our house for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you'd be surprised how many people send me beds to try and test out. That's not an uncommon thing to have happen. But also we see a lot of times I won't spend the night in the same room as my wife. So she likes to sleep with the television on and the dogs in the bed. So there's only so many nights a week that I can do something like that before I need to get my sleep. And so what I have a tendency to do is for 3 or 4 days during the week, I might stay in the guest room. And then for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'll stay in our room. And it works out great. In that room, we've got a Haston's, which is a different kind of mattress altogether, 100% organic. I know you're kind of on the organic side of things. The really most interesting two products that I'd say I've been working with lately, and this is from a technology standpoint, there's a new napping technology, believe it or not, called Nap Jitsu. So this is where people can take a nap during the middle of the day and wake up and have 100 milligrams of caffeine and 600 milligrams of nootropics on board and ready to fire. That's kind of a cool product that I've been working with and had my patients try. And then the other big one that I've been working with is called Mute, M-U-T-E, and it's an internal nasal dilator. So it actually goes up into your nose and stops you from snoring. My wife loves this. If I'm drinking scotch, she says, go put your nose thingy in. I don't want to listen to you tonight. And it works.
Yeah, snoring happens for me if I eat dairy. Because
that happens to my wife too.
Yeah, definitely congestion instantaneously, which is why I'm not dairy free completely, but I'm much reduced. People think I'm vegan because I'm always making vegan cheeses or talking about vegan cheeses because I love the cheese, but it doesn't agree with me, and so I try not to eat it very often.
I have an ice cream problem myself.
So now we dealt a little bit about the stuff, the products. What about, let's just address diet really quickly in terms of your what you think diet plays a role in someone's sleep.
Yeah, so we know
besides wine and caffeine, which we already covered.
Yeah, of course. So when we look at food and food in general, there's a couple of different things to think about. So in my second book, which was called The Sleep Doctor's Diet, Lose Weight Through Better Sleep, we talk about the relationship between sleep and the metabolic process, right? And so the more deprived you are, the more likely your body is to gain weight, to crave high fat, high carbohydrate foods. I can go into all the science, but do me a favor, just trust me on this one. There's so much science behind it. It's unbelievable. But basically what happens is your appetite increases, your hunger increases. Those are two very different things inside your brain. Your metabolism slows and your cravings increase. And it all points towards high fat, high carbohydrate foods. Now, you might be wondering, why does your brain want to do that? Well, your brain wants you to eat high carbohydrate foods because it's calming, because it produces serotonin. And that's why we call them comfort foods, is because they make us feel comfortable. And by the way, they work for sleep. So there are some very sleep-friendly foods, but you have to be careful because they can also pack on the pounds. So when I'm talking to people about a dinner, let's say, that they're going to have, you're looking for something that's, for example, high in omega-3s. So salmon is a fantastic thing. You might have a salad that's going to have avocado on it because we know that the high fat in avocado is actually very healthy for sleep. We also know that the fiber, let's say you had a kale salad with it, although you'd probably have to eat a lot of kale to get enough magnesium in you. Magnesium can also be very helpful for sleep. So I try to get people to eat meals that have constituents in them that are going to be beneficial for sleep. So this would be omegas. You want to stay away, believe it or not, from the vitamin B, as in boys. You want those in the morning because those have a tendency to be very energetic. But you want to keep with things like magnesium, calcium, potassium, those kind of things. And there, believe it or not, there's some melatonin-rich foods, believe it or not. Melatonin is produced in some foods. Tart cherries, it turns out, got more melatonin than almost anything else out there. But things like pistachios have got melatonin in them. Avocado has got a small amount of melatonin in it. So there's a lot of food out there that you can kind of get to that can be helpful with sleep.
So I'm sure you're all thinking, wow, he's like a wealth of knowledge that you could talk to for several hours and has so much information. This is why I've been on his list since 2009. So let's there was a quiz, and we don't even cover chronotypes yet. Can we do that? And then let's talk about the quiz and then your book.
You got it. I know I do this a lot. I just, it's fun to talk to you. You're interesting.
Why, thank you. And I know I could talk for hours and hours about what I'm passionate about and what I know also. And it's like, that's why I have a podcast, so I can talk.
Exactly. So we'll do quickly chronotypes. So we were back talking about early birds, night owls before. So what I did was I created 4 different chronotypes. I renamed them basically because I'm a mammal, not a bird. So early birds turn into lions. I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't want to be the king or queen of the jungle, right? So these are my high performers, usually my alphas, COOs of a company type of thing. They make a list every day. They go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. You know who you are. They don't go to bed late. Dinner and a movie is out for a lion because they've been up since 4:30 in the morning, usually on their own. So it's a whole kind of different universe. Bears are what replaces the hummingbird. And bears are folks in the middle. They make up 55% of the population. I wish I was a bear. It would be so much easier if I was a bear because the world works on a bear schedule. Like 9 to 5 works perfect for a bear. Wolves are night owls. That's me. I am a night owl. As you heard me say earlier, I don't go to bed before midnight. So that kind of tipped it off for most folks. My night owls have a tendency to be my creatives. So my artists, my actors, my authors, people like that. If you know somebody that's creative and you say, hey, when did you get your inspiration for that? Nobody says 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They always say 2 o'clock in the morning. And then there are the dolphins. So up until this point, everything's been kind of the same, right? Early birds are lions, middle of the road are bears, night owls are wolves. What is this dolphin thing? So this was my big contribution to the literature is these are all genetic, by the way. These aren't things that you get to choose. I can actually look on your human genome at the PER3. And if there's a SNP or a flip there, I can tell you exactly what you are. Turns out there's a type of insomnia that's genetic. And that's what dolphins represent. These are people who are just born not great sleepers. They're very similar to my lions, except for they've got enough anxiety that they're just kind of humming at a different frequency. It's easy to identify these people. If you walk into a room and you see somebody tapping their foot up and down, they're a dolphin, almost guaranteed, because they're trying to get rid of all of this excess energy that they've constantly got going through their head. They have a tendency to have anxiety, whereas my lions have a tendency to have confidence. And so that is a big differentiator between my lions and my dolphins. If you want to know which one you are, it will actually tell you the perfect time of day to have sex, eat a cheeseburger, ask your boss for a raise, or go to sleep and wake up, go to chronoquiz.com and you can learn what your chronotype is.
I don't even know that I did that quiz. Well, I'm going to do it now. I'm definitely not a lion because, I did love getting, no, I take that back. I accepted for 25 years that I got up at 4:45 or 5:30 with an alarm and that I felt very productive in the middle of the day. But I didn't feel as free nor have been as successful as I am now when I sleep in with no alarm and feel completely free. So it's a whole different world. But I was a good early morning person, but the alarm is a little bit jarring. So chronoquiz.com. And now let's talk about your newest book.
So my newest book is called Energize, Go From Dragging Ass to Kicking It in 30 Days. And what we did is we took the science of chronotypes to be able to be adopted within the sleep universe. And that's what I did in my last book. So that was a little bit of a repeat in this book. So if you didn't read the last one, you'll get some of that information here. But yeah, I'm an intermittent faster, and I have been for about 6 years. And I discovered when I started intermittent fasting that if I did it based on my chronotype, it was more effective. So I'm a night owl. I can't eat breakfast, JJ. Like I will literally throw up if I try to eat something at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like it just doesn't work for me. But about 11:30 or so, that's when I can start to eat. So what I did was I shifted my entire intermittent fast based on my chronotype, and all of a sudden it became very interesting. So that's part of the book. Then we also included something called body types. So you may have to think back to high school biology, but you're a trainer, so you probably dealt with this far more during your training days. And by the way, my new book is written with my co-author, Stacy Griffith. So for folks who don't know Stacy, she's one of the first trainers at Soul Cycle, the indoor bicycle class. And so what she had taught me was, she said that she found exercises for people based on their body types. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, if somebody's an endomorph, somebody's a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, I don't tell them to, get on the bike and spin, because it's miserable for them. They'll hate it and they won't be motivated. I'll tell them to do resistance exercise because they can be more successful at it, and I'll slowly walk them into cardio. And I said, well, what do you do for somebody who's long and lean, like an ectomorph? And she said, well, those people are straight up cardio. And then I slowly walk them into anaerobic exercise because they never would have done that before. And so I said, so you base it on body type? And she said, well, I guess I kind of do. And so we started looking into the literature to understand more about body type. Here's something that's cool about intermittent fasting and body type. It actually tells you how long to fast. So if you're an ectomorph, long and lean, probably don't want to lose a whole lot of weight, but want to maintain what you've got, you're going to do a 12 and 12. Right? So 12-hour fast, 12-hour feed. If you're a mesomorph, which is kind of somebody in the middle, so your shoulders are a little bit bigger than your waist, kind of more of a V-shaped, that kind of individual is going to fast for 14 hours, feed for 10 hours. Somebody who's an endomorph, a little bit on the thicker side, and is looking to lose weight through intermittent fasting, you would feed for 8 hours and you would fast for 16 hours. So you see what I did there is I gave you a starting point based on your genetics, so you're not floating around out there trying to figure out what it is you're supposed to do. And then the final aspect was movement. And so, as you know, having been in this universe for a while, sitting is the new smoking, right? I mean, it's terrible. So we have a 5-point movement program where you do it 5 times a day for only 5 minutes. I want to be clear though, it's not exercise. Nobody's sweating doing this program. The first one is a stretch, kind of makes sense. Early in the morning, we want you to kind of loosen things up, kind of lube it up, kind of get everything worked out. The second one is a shake. So you literally sit there and you shake your hands or you shake your legs. I don't know. You said you have cats. I don't know if you have dogs. My dog, when he gets up from a nap, he does this crazy thing where and does this crazy shaky thing, right? That's what I'm talking about. It's energetically will change you almost like that. The third one is a bounce. So jump rope, skip, get out that old mini tramp that you bought in the 80s that you're probably not using and use it again. The fourth one is a build. So this is with a major muscle group like a push-up, sit-up, or maybe a deep knee bend. Again, no sweating here, just moving. And then the final one is a balance. So maybe a tree pose or something like that before bed. But it helps you keep moving throughout the day. And so you don't stiffen up, that inflammation doesn't set in. And if you're eating well, using intermittent fasting, if that's your thing, it can actually turn out to be a really a successful program. One caveat I do want to put out there is for anybody out there who has an eating disorder or who has struggled with eating issues, intermittent fasting is not appropriate for you to do without talking with your doctor. So whoever you are working with in that universe, please talk to them first, because we have seen several people with eating disorders get into the intermittent fasting and it's become very bad for them. So please be careful.
Well, we'll bring fasters over here. We've had many doctors talk about the benefits of fasting, from the 5-day fasting mimicking diet and intermittent fasting to all kinds of fasts to help reset your gut, to help reset immunity, and then and for autophagy, for cell detoxification. So we've had conversations about fasting and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we love fasting over here. And definitely if you're not doing any kind of fasting, intermittent fasting is a great place to start. And an even better place is to get Dr. Breus's book and find out which place to really start for your body type. And then from there, you can see what your goals are for why you're doing it in the first place. I do know Dr. Breus Lipton and I talked about this, it's documented that your lifespan will increase when you eat less. So so it's another thing to adopt just to be healthier longer and to stay around and ward off some general disease and breakdown of the body. So where can they get the book? I mean, it's out, so they can get it on Amazon, because I got the audio book on Kindle or.
Yep, exactly. So people can find it. You can go to energizemyself.com or My Energy Quiz. Of course, it's available on Amazon. Just type in Sleep Doctor and it'll pop right up. Yeah, we'd love to have people, or just go take the chrono quiz and learn about your chronotype that way. And then over the course of time, you might find the book valuable for yourself.
So the link will be in the show notes. If you're here on YouTube, it'll be below. If you're listening on the podcast, you have to click more and you'll see the Dr. Breus's bio and the link for energizemyself.com and the chronoquiz.com. And then you can, and then I'll put your website in there also, and the Sleep Doctor. And if you want more of Dr. Breus, which I'm sure you're going to want to, you'll be on his list. And then you, like me, will start getting his emails and all the information that he has. So make sure to reach out and get the book. And if you love this episode and you want to hear more, let me know. I mean, I'd love to have you back on. I'm sure there's lots of things we can continue talking about. But if there's anything specific that you want me to ask him, I'd love to hear that. So go ahead and shoot me a whatever. People come to the website, people send me messages through social media. Just let me know what kind of content you'd like to hear more about. And Dr. Breus, thank you so much. It was fun. I could talk to you all day.
I'm having a blast. I don't want it to end. I think this is great. I love your platform and I really like your emphasis. And I really love the idea of helping people become more emotionally empowered, because that's really where it's at. Like, I mean, the biology of it all is the biology, right? But if you can really work through some of those issues, you can change your biology with your psychology, I believe.
We all know that. Biology of belief. We all are. No, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't talk for all of you guys. Yes, we are. But I know that. And I believe that 100%. And, it's the idea of always balancing out the inside out versus the outside in. Right. And because some people, you change some of the external things and it helps the internal things. And all of a sudden you feel, when you get a good night's sleep, maybe you don't have anxiety anymore because you actually get real sleep and you're not looking for, and you're not overutilizing caffeine or things that, definitely you want to look at what you're doing, if it's outside in or inside out. And then if it's not working 100%, then do the opposite. Like find how, all right, well, I've done all these external things. I've gotten the right bed. I've stopped caffeine. I've had the wine. I stopped this and I still can't sleep. All right. Now it's an internal thing. Right.
Yep. 100%.
And I do appreciate that you cover both of those, because sometimes it's too easy to just do the tricks. Oh, the tricks. Here's the Band-Aids. And so I want to make sure, and that's what I love about your platform, is coming from a psychological standpoint. It isn't just the trick, it isn't just the bed. You aren't selling beds. I mean, You might be, but you're not really selling beds. You're not really selling all these products, but they help. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to go internally too if those don't do the trick.
Yeah. And I would also argue that they'll never do the trick without you going internally on some level. Right. I mean, unless you're, like I said before, unless you're sleeping on a bed that looks like a taco, you've got something between your ears that is probably causing at least part of what's going on with your sleep.
Well, amen to that. And thank you so much again for being here. Please, everybody go to a couple of different places, chronoquiz.com, energizemyself.com, and thesleepdoctor.com, and make sure to get on his list and check out his, get his book, take the quiz, and then let me know what kind of conversation you want to hear about next. Thank you, Dr. Breus.
Thank you, JJ. Sweet dreams.